Hi guys, I wanted to show you a few changes I've made in my backyard. I set this bench up. It's actually made from the pieces of the bench that was back there. And it was never comfortable to sit in. The slats were too far apart, but I realized that if I put the wood on top of the bricks instead of through the openings of the cinder blocks, that it would be more comfortable. So I've put it there, and obviously it needs a little more leveling up, which I will do in about a month because I'm going to give it a chance to settle a bit in, and then I will work a little bit more on getting a level look. But I love it there. It actually gives me a great view of the rustic flower and herb garden, which I've packed full of things, and I can sit on my bench and take a break and have a hydration break on the bench and look at how things are doing. And I have put everything but the kitchen sink in my rustic garden bed. I've got tomatoes and herbs and flowers. I just recently transplanted in some oregano, and I had previously planted some basil. There's a big thyme bush also transplanted in. And the other big change is, well, let me finish showing you this. I also put in some rescue Alberta spruces. They're kind of a dwarf spruce, and I thought it would give nice structure to my rustic garden bed in the winter. Just two little conical trees, and it would look kind of nice even in the winter. So I put those in there, and they seem to be rebounding. They were at Lowe's on the clearance rack. They'd been badly neglected. They just get too many plants to take care of, and that's why we can score such good deals on these plants and bring them back. It's kind of fun to see them bounce back. But I had moved the herbs from over here, and I planted my hydrangeas that I had divided. I planted 3 over there, and then I planted 1 in a very shady location behind the owl garden. So that's all the way over there. But I do like to mass plant things and plant them in multiples. So that is why I tuck those in. Even though I was going to wait till fall, let them fill out in the pot, I just put lots of good dirt around them, and I think they'll just do fine. And although it's sunny while I'm filming it, it's actually a very shady location for most of the day. Basically just dappled sun. These were some rescue zinnias that I got also from Lowe's, and they're bouncing back pretty well. I've had a little bit of trouble growing zinnias from seed. I have quite a few rabbits in my garden. I have a back set of rabbits and a set of rabbits that's closer to the house, but a fox has been through recently, and I don't seem to have a rabbit problem back here anymore. I'm going to fantasize and hope that the rabbit and its family moved out. Let's just think of it that way. Here's another view of my baby hydrangea hedge, and I'm going to keep those watered every day. I think they're going to need it. But I love how my geraniums look around my bench. I'm really happy with that area. I think it looks very nice. And to fill in the gap where the bench was, I moved the bee bath further up, and I put the peonies further forward, and I underplanted all of that with some marigold seedlings that I grew in my polytunnel, and I'm hoping that those really flush out and give me some beautiful summer color and fall color. And I left the grasses where they are. I thought they worked very well in the space as is. And then along here, it's quite a mess. This is sort of right now my container gardening area. I was working on developing a strip here, and right now I have some container plants. I put a sage that was doing poorly in the soil up in a pot. We'll see if it does better. And I had this beautiful fig tree, which I have pruned up to be 1 liter. So that's going to grow nice and tall and take a tree form rather than a bush form. And then I moved my potatoes back here, and I think they're doing well. But I did prune them back. I beat them up a bit in the moving process, and I hope I didn't affect my potato crop. So If you guys have grown potatoes before, let me know if you've ever pruned them and if it affected your yield. We'll see. I don't even know if I'll get any yield at all. This is my first year, and it's all an experiment to me. And my biggest pop of color is some more of my geraniums, which are in a galvanized tub. And these are the ones that I brought in for the winter from last year. And then I was able to bring them back. They just went into dormancy, but I'm so pleased to see how big and vigorous they've gotten for the second year in a row. And I did do a video on taking them out from their overwintering if you're interested in trying that yourself. And the quick fire hydrangeas are starting to bloom. They are so beautiful. These start out white and they turn to a pink, and then in the end they're kind of a greenish pink. And they are just beautiful. These I planted last year and they were clearance plants from Lowe's. And they really took beautifully to this spot. So I have two there and one here. And this one doesn't have as many blooms. It's a little bit later in the cycle. And I'm not sure why. It does get more sun than the other two, so maybe that has something to do with it. But they were all three purchased at the same time. And I think they're just so beautiful. They really fill up this difficult to plant space very well. I think orange marigolds are my favorite. They are so beautiful. They kind of have a dwarf habit and they're just so bright, especially in a blue pot. I'm crazy about these. And I've got pots all over the place. The things that I have planted are starting to really take off from the heat. They, of course, appreciate all the heat and sunshine and really do well when things heat up. When the rest of us are wilting, some of these summer flowers are just glorious. And this is Lantana over here, and I always have at least one pot of that because the butterflies love it. And I've got more hydrangeas in bloom. This enormous hydrangea, it must be about 6 feet wide, was given to me about 25 years ago, I would say, for my garden. It was from my mother-in-law's condominium. Someone had given her a gift, a flowering bush, and she brought it over and said, why don't you pop this in the garden? I used to have these when I had my home that had a garden. And interestingly enough, the shadier side has more blooms, so that's kind of interesting to note. But they're gorgeous. They're a mix of colors, and hydrangeas are just some of my favorite flowers. But I've got a mix of pinks, and of course when they first come out they're that light green, pale green color, and then I've got some blue ones in the back. Just gorgeous. So I'm really excited to see that one blooming this year. There have been a few years where I haven't pruned it at the right time and I haven't gotten blooms, but this year looks like a glorious year for the hydrangea, and I couldn't be more excited. And of course I always think of my dear mother-in-law when I look at this bush. And as I mentioned before, I've had some trouble growing zinnia seeds, so I actually found these at Lowe's. This is like a Lowe's clearance tour, I feel like, but these were just wilting because they hadn't been watered. I brought them home and put them in my pots. They're actually just still in their nursery pots. They're not planted, but they fit perfectly in my beautiful blue pots. And I just gave them loads of water the last few days, and they're glorious. So I think that they're safe from the rabbits up on my table, and instead of having them in the ground this year, I'll just enjoy them in pots. So one shift I made this year with my container planting was I've incorporated a lot of evergreens into the containers, and that way they can hopefully be enjoyed throughout the year. And also I'm already halfway set up for next year. All I have to do is add a little bit of flowers around them. But as you can see, my topiaries, these I made myself, are doing really well. And then this little kind of stone crop sedum has completely filled in this pot. So that's wonderful. But the topiaries are doing well enough to be putting out more growth, and I'm just going to let them fill out a bit. And then in the middle of this one, it's even hard to see, is a soft touch holly. Try not to get the shadows on there. And it has some alyssum in the back that hasn't flowered yet, and some gorgeous petunias. And they've really taken off too. And this, by the way, is alyssum as well. These don't look like much right now. These were some Lowe's rescues, but I thought they would be nice flanking the steps, and I couldn't resist these gorgeous blue pots. So hopefully those will look really nice, and I may or may not put some flowers underneath. And this corner's turned out amazing. This is just so beautiful. This is the lemon coral sedum. Absolutely gorgeous. I don't care if it ever flowers. The foliage is just a prize. And it's underplanted with an Alberta spruce. And if you can't tell, I've used a lot of the Alberta spruce. It's a beautiful natural conical shape. It stays a small size, and it's just so pretty as a container plant. And then over here, I had to dig up my echinacea. They're right here. I had to save it from the rabbits. I have a fig tree cutting, which may or may not make it. And then in the back, I've grown from seed some tall blue dondo ageratum. So I'm excited to see what type of blooms they'll give me. And I have my beautiful classic white geraniums. So they look really fantastic in the mix. And it's actually turned into quite a patriotic mix, although I didn't plant it that way. But my friend had given me these petunias. They were being eaten in her garden, and she said, you've got to take them and save them. And I'm so happy I popped them in there. I think they look really beautiful in the mix. And again, that was my wonderful friend Lori that shares so much with me in the garden. And speaking of my friend Lori, she had some black-eyed Susans escape from one of her planting beds and offered me about 10 or 12 of them. And I popped them in here. It's under a pine tree. The soil isn't that great. I did amend it with my homemade compost. But black-eyed Susans don't need a lot of nutrients. They're just really hardy and drought resistant. So they got planted yesterday, and they're already starting to bounce back. And I'm looking forward in the upcoming years to a glorious display. She's given me so many black-eyed Susans around the yard, and I'm excited to have another whole patch of them. And here's a little scan of the hill. Evening primrose are finishing up. That's the touch of yellow. And they're setting seed, which they'll drop so that they can bloom again next year. And then some of my small hydrangeas that I put in last year, I think they're called Bloomstruck, are blooming a beautiful deep pink. And so I'm excited to see that those bloomed again this year. I think they're a great easy plant. And I have another fig tree at the top of the hill doing really well. Again, pruned up like a tree, just the way I like it. And my hostas are looking good now, but this has become a more sunny area, and later in the summer they do suffer. So although they look now, they're starting to turn yellow from too much sun. And you know, what happened was we had a few trees that had to be removed, and trees have been limbed up, and now it's not such a shady area anymore. So, you know, if in a few years, if things are really looking bad, I may have to transplant these and put in some sun-loving flowers. But it's a pretty big job because these are very established and they have very big roots. And look guys, so many of my tomato plants are starting to set fruit. I'm really excited about this one. It's called the blueberry cherry, and the tomato turns blue when it's ripe. So I'm excited to taste that one. It shouldn't be long before we can pick those. And here's a fruit growing on my beefsteak tomato. Still green, but luckily not bothered by any pests yet. It looks beautiful. So I can't wait to taste that in a couple weeks. I also found these wonderful garden sculpture spheres. They have stars and moons all over them, and they have the beautiful cobalt blue that I love. I think they're beautiful. And I actually found these at TJ Maxx. I couldn't believe it. I think they're so beautiful, and it's color year round. very low maintenance. You just pop it where you want it, and it just makes that beautiful impact. And here's another Alberta spruce which I planted. It was also half price, neglected, and it's already bounced back really well. So guys, thanks for watching my garden update today. I hope you're having fun in your gardens, and I'll see you next time.